co-founder relationships can be amazing, and they can be so productive, and 1 + 1 = 3, but they can also be the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
Choose carefully, I suppose. It's just like it's such a very important decision.
From scrappy founders to 8-figure success stories, we're busting startup myths, getting raw insights from market-tested entrepreneurs, and revealing the proven playbook for bootstrapping your B2B startup to 5 million. This is the Startup Different podcast.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Startup Different. I am David Singleton. Here is Christopher Singleton. And with me today is Taylor Crane. Taylor, thank you so much for joining us today. It's awesome to have you on the pod.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, okay, a lot to talk about. I'm very interested in your current business, but you're sort of a serial entrepreneur. You've had some success. You've had an exit before. I definitely want to explore that and that journey. Can you take us through today a little bit of that background, and then we'll dig into some of the lessons you've learned so far and how we can, help our audience with some of that information?
Yeah, sure. I mean, let me start with just the high level, I guess, context on me and my background. I spent about 10 years in the tech startup ecosystem, mostly as a product manager, so a PM working with designers and engineers. I started my first company in 2020, actually in the second week of the pandemic.
Nice.
It's called Clubs Poker. It's an online poker app for friends. So very much like a pandemic inspired idea. The idea was to take online poker and rebuild it for friendly environments with video chat, integrated.
Oh, cool.
And,
cool. That's fun. That's a neat idea. Where you just kind of like, I want to play poker with my buddies, but I don't want it to be this kind of like, I don't want to be on like Poker Stars or something like that.
I don't want to get COVID.
Yeah. Also don't want to get COVID. Yeah.
That's basically it. I spent about 4 years as a poker player before getting into the tech world. And
cool.
But then that chapter, I thought closed for me. And then in the second week of the pandemic, I found myself with my high school friends playing, poker online on Poker Stars, as you mentioned.
Oh, no way. That's crazy.
And feeling like it was like just an absolutely terrible experience, but that there was so much opportunity for it. So I kind of revisited my love for poker, but from a more, a business angle as opposed to like a player angle, which was quite interesting. Yeah,
that's interesting. So you kind of saw an opportunity for something, and it's kind of I never really would have thought about that as a potential like avenue for poker. I always think of poker, especially Poker Stars, as being like the people who have like the headset, like the earbuds in, the aviators on, the hat, kind of trying to have like no emotion. But when you're with your buddies, like, yeah, like you're gonna have some tells and stuff like that. But that's like part of the fun. You know what I mean with your friends. So. And yeah, that would have been crazy challenging during the pandemic. So it's actually a pretty cool idea. So what happened with that business?
So a roller coaster ride of ups and downs.
Sounds about right.
It was I raised venture and so like we were bootstrapping it at first. Raised venture capital, tried to build a massive business. Had a lot of successes, had a lot of failures too. Ended up selling the business in 2023. Okay. Not for like I'm not retired yet, so sure. But at least it was a win and like my the way that I approached building the business was focusing on play money poker, where you can play with friends, right? But that made the business model so much harder to discover the right business model, and so we ended up exiting to a company that was much better positioned to sort of attack like the real money poker world in the US with like much bigger budgets and teams of lawyers that that we didn't have, and so that's where the product is headed today.
That's interesting. Well, like what? So I'm just going to take a shot at this. Do you know the business model for normal poker? I got to imagine they get a cut, right, of some part of the transaction. Somebody wins something you win a hand, it's for $10, they get 50 cents, like, I don't know, something like that. And there's a bajillion hands going on. So they probably make a ton of money doing that. Right. But if you're just playing with friends, and if that's not the model, what is the model? Like, what is the business model for a sort of non-confrontational version of poker?
Yeah. So our approach and our pitch, and frankly, one that I still believe in strongly right now, is Fortnite meets poker.
Hey, Dave here. Let me tell you a little secret. When we were building AppArmor, we needed to move fast, especially with quotes and invoicing. FreshBooks made that possible. Yeah, this is an ad, but seriously, FreshBooks was essential. My sales team could send sharp quotes in minutes, and it automatically handled millions in invoices and reminders. No chasing, no stress, just cash flowing in. It was so easy to get paid. It's built for small businesses by folks who get it. And yeah, like us, they're Canadian. What's not to like? If you want to spend less time on paperwork and more time growing your business, head to freshbooks.com and start your free trial. Trust me, it's a game changer. And now, back to the show.
So monetizing on like a freemium type model, basically incentivizing the business to make money by maximizing the fun that's happening at the table, not the profit or the amount of money exchanging hands. And
it wasn't real money either that people were betting, or was real money.
It's correct. So like the software that we built for legal reasons was play money only, software. Now, between you and I and the listeners, a lot of folks were settling up amongst themselves on using PayPal or using crypto.
Yeah, you might.
But
so you lose a couple $100 and then you just wire it to your buddy afterwards or whatever.
Exactly correct.
That's cool. That's fine. That's an interesting model though. I totally see eye to eye with this. I feel like there's kind of two kinds. I mean, we're kind of digressing here a little bit. Now we're talking about poker, but I kind of think of there's two kinds of people with poker. There's the really hardcore people that want to put in, they go to a casino. If you go with your group of friends, let's say there's 5 of you, there's 2 of you that want to go to the really expensive tables and play intense poker. There's one guy who doesn't want to play. And then there's 2 other people who are I'm going to go to the, $2 bet or $5 bet, blackjack or poker table, the really cheap stuff. And cause that's the entertainment value is what I want out of that. I feel like I'm in that category. And this kind of really appeals to me because I don't really want to wager a lot of money, but I do want to be able to, play with my friends. And it makes it really accessible if we're across the continent or something like that, which a lot of my friends live out west. So it's kind of a cool idea. It's a novel way to take on sort of a interesting, sort of more traditional market. But okay, so you had this business.
It will exist in my final vision. It will exist. I don't know exactly when, but yeah.
So you're not affiliated with it anymore. You're basically
I sort of close with the founding team now, but yeah, that's I'm not day to day working on it now.
Right. Okay, cool. So let's talk about your day to day. Where are you now?
So yeah, sold that company, was kind of faced with an existential career question as to what it is that I wanted to do next. And I knew that I wasn't ready to start another company at the time. But I also wasn't interested in getting a job, as an employee.
That would be so tough. I can't even imagine after having your own thing and being now I'm gonna go have a bunch of bosses. That would be rough. So.
It's it's kind of one of those once you never go back kind of thing, or at least
can't go back to coach.
So what I ended up. So I fell into this is how I fell into fractional work, doing fractional work myself. But the motivation, and before I even knew that that's the label that I wanted to use and what I wanted to do, is I knew how tough. I learned through experience how tough the founder journey was over the past 3 years building the online poker startup, and I felt such a strong motivation to help other early stage founders on their journey doing the thing that I know best, which is product management. And so that's how I fell into becoming a fractional head of product, where I spent about a year doing this, working with about 6 different early stage startups as their quote unquote head of product, but part-time, right? So 2 to 3 clients at a time, working 10-ish hours a week for each one. For various reasons, which I can get into, but that's what exposed me to the fractional world and the benefits of so cool doing fractional work. And I can talk about that, but then also just got exposed to how obviously smart it is for certain startups at certain stages in their journey to hire fractional leaders, fractional executives.
It's funny because when we sold our company back in 2022, and this wasn't really a thing yet, or at least it wasn't as mainstream, but I find it very fascinating. So I guess let's do a little table setting here first off. Can you just fully flesh out what exactly is a fractional? I know what it is, but I think for everybody here, that'd be helpful. And then why would you want to do it? Why would you want to go out and get a fractional versus finding somebody who's got a lot of experience and getting them in-house and that kind of idea?
Yeah. So fractional work is part-time work typically paid on a monthly retainer, and performed by experts in their field. So I think the part-time work part is pretty obvious. It's what the word fractional actually, literally implies.
Makes sense, yeah.
And then paid on a monthly retainer, hourly rate is also not uncommon, but this is about like, setting the expectation that this is like an indefinite resource that you have, that you're, like you're paying someone's salary, right? But it's just structured a little bit differently. And then the experts in their field portion is really the key to understanding what fractional work is. It's performed by experts, meaning like you are coming into a company fractionally because you have been there, done that several times over at other companies, probably in full-time roles, and you're now showing up at this early stage startup or small business to level them up extremely quickly, knowing what you are like, knowing or like leveraging the expertise that you already have. And this is what differentiates fractional from like, typical freelance work, which tends to be performed by more junior or mid-level employees.
What about like consultants though? Because it feels like a consultant, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So is it? I know like some people think consultant is like a bad word, which like maybe I do too. I'm not sure, but it's like, is it in the same vein? Like it feels kind of similar, but like, so what's the difference there?
Yeah, so like I think technically, if we drew like a Venn diagram, I imagine that consultants would be like freelance is technically consulting, fractional is technically consulting, right? But I think practically speaking, when we use the word consultant, we're thinking about a very specific type of resource, someone that is probably providing maybe some strategic guidance, maybe some advisory work there. But the key is like the expectation is that they are keeping themselves at arm's reach from the company. So they're almost certainly not doing execution work. They're almost certainly not, in your Slack channel every day, working with you in the team meetings. They're definitely not managing a team of, let's say, marketers if they're a fractional CMO. If they're a consultant.
Sure.
But if you are a fractional CMO, that is a very common part of the job description. So the difference between fractional and consulting is that fractional is meant to feel like a full-time role in every way imaginable, with the one exception that you're not full-time, you're just dedicating a portion of your time.
Yeah. So just going back to your point, I feel like fractional, I see them in the org chart, whereas a consultant, I wouldn't see them in an org chart. They would sort of be coming in for a meeting or something like that, but wouldn't appear in the org chart. Just out of curiosity, flip that for me. For the people doing the fractional work, why do, work with 3 different companies 10 hours a week instead of just, you're at 30 hours a week, you're pretty close to full-time at that point. Why not just take a full-time job? What's the appeal of the fractional? Is it getting exposure to multiple different companies, or is it, why do people do it that way?
Yeah, so the list is a long one. I'll go through a couple of them right now. You mentioned one, getting exposure to earlier stage companies. If you're someone in your career that you maybe are sick of the corporate grind, you want to be able to work with more exciting early stage startups, but you know that they can't quite pay the full-time salary that you would be needing, fractional could be a perfect solution for you. A second very common reason, and this tends to appeal towards those that are the hardest working, those that like are very self-motivated. Fractional work is an opportunity to basically uncap your upside earnings. So there really is no limit to how much you can earn, right? I have so I run we'll get to this in a second, but I run the talent marketplace now called Fractional Jobs, and like we have 15,000 plus fractional leaders in the network today, and a lot of them are very, very hardworking people from like the top percentage of their function area, and they are able to make sometimes 50%, sometimes even 100% more than if they had an equivalent full-time job at name your company.
That's pretty interesting. I feel like, so 2 things. One is I really like the execution angle. Just going back to the consultant thing for a second, the fact that they execute, because I'll tell you what I have heard at other companies with people who are in like similar boats, is like the consultant comes in, like my old boss after we were acquired, she came in just before we showed up and had pitched sort of this reorganization of the sales organization at their company, at the company that acquired us. And then they were like, after she was done, they were like, hey, you want to just like do it? And she was like, yeah, okay. And so she took over the whole thing and just sort of, she became the CRO of the company, like just like that. And so, and then we showed up and we kind of like fit into that mold. But that's what that felt like. That feels very fractional then to me, the actual delivery. So if you're listening today and you're wondering, like, do I need a consultant or do I need a fractional? The real question is, do you need somebody to execute, or do you need help on like strategy and like vision and kind of having like a bit of a different vibe there? The second thing that's interesting, first off, congratulations. That's a very impressive 15,000 member network of amazing people. Because I've generally been pretty impressed by fractionals when I've met people who like do that sort of thing. I didn't realize the earning potential was so significant though. Like 100%.
That's a huge motivator. That's a big, that moves the
it's
needle
almost
big
like
time.
why would you act? It's like, it's the opposite. Why would you work at a big company if you knew you could make double?
And keep in mind, that's for folks that are really looking to push themselves, right? To work, a significant amount. It's not, of course, I don't want to, I want to make it clear that that's not always the case.
Everybody makes 100%. That's what I'm hearing right now.
It's actually like, when you do fractional work, you are effectively becoming a business owner, right? And like you and I know so well, and everyone listening, like most businesses actually fail, right? So like there is going to be a portion of people that are entering fractional work that are not going to be able to build a successful fractional practice. It's kind of like the opportunity spectrums is much greater than if you were a full-time employee, where it's kind of like a more narrow set of like your earnings are a minimum of this and kind of a maximum of that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I also feel like, I mean, we're obviously not like team big company here, but I always felt like with a big company, you have what appears to be like security, but like I worked at a big telecom and they used to go through like every year, they called it layoff season, where because of like they had to reach, a certain share price, they could cut headcount, they could then report that right away, and they could make the share price look better because they could tell the market about how they were cost cutting or something like that. There was basically just this like cyclical nature of people just getting let go. Like eventually you're going to get fired from a big company. What I think is interesting about this is that you could be taking assuming you can do it, which I think is a good point, by the way, I was just teasing before, but that you could take that skill set and be your own boss and make more. I think is kind of fascinating. I think what you would probably do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my gut would tell me that most people would be like, I have this job, I'm really good at marketing, and I'm going to just do this fractional thing for like 10 hours a week to see if I can do it, see if it's a fit. And then they kind of slowly move more into it if it works for them, and they back away from it if it doesn't work. You can almost like side hustle it effectively.
Absolutely true. Correct.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So how did you get into making like a marketplace for this? Because so you are a fractional guy, and then one day you're like, man, this is really hard to find gigs, or like what happened here?
Kind of actually, yeah. Like the biggest in my own work, and then in meeting other fractionals, it became obvious that here's the core insight was like, you could be the most incredible, talented person in your function area, the most incredible design leader,
like
the most incredible,
not Chris, but me for sure. But I don't know about Chris.
But if you don't have a big enough network to sustain lead generation, you're not going to be successful doing fractional work. And that just like didn't sit well with me and felt like an opportunity. And so like, so like the hardest part of doing fractional work is not the work itself. It's finding clients to be able to work with, because it requires sales work, it requires marketing work, imagine you're an amazing CTO, right? Like you've probably never done sales in your life, you've never had to market yourself. The idea of turning yourself into a personal brand is incredibly icky, and so that is. So that's part one.
That sounds like Chris. You're kind of like pegging Chris here. I'm not sure if you're trying to do that, but good for you.
And then part two is like just the awareness problem on particularly the company side, the founder side, of just not really seeing clearly that so many founders are not aware of this as a tool in the tool belt. And so anyway, this is what all spawned me wanting to make a contribution to the space, and it became Fractional Jobs.
Cool. So you've got this big setup, this great marketplace. Presumably it's going well. Did you opt to raise capital this time, given your experience the first time, or what happened there? Or are you just bootstrapping this? What's going on?
I am bootstrapping this, and I'm so proud of that and so excited about it.
Nice.
And it, like, I feel so much better day to day, and for so many reasons that, maybe we want to unpack, but I love it. And I'll stop there. It's so I'm so enjoying the the elements of bootstrapping.
Well, let's unpack it. Like I feel like we're very supportive of bootstrapping because we would see in our various so there's lots of like practical data backed reasons as to why it's bad. Like it causes like a different set of incentives, like different. You usually have a fundamental misalignment with your investors. Like they want a quick return, you want to build something special. It puts a lot of pressure on you. You start by going into debt. You might not actually need that capital. Like there's a bunch of like different reasons why, or your market might not be ready. Like so many different things that we believe, and some data supports that, going for early seed funding is actually like a really bad idea. So what was your experience and I guess like it must have been bad because you're feeling really good now. So.
Yeah, I think so. Everything you said, I echo. I have one extra thing I want to add, but I also want to be clear that like my investors in my previous company were awesome. And cool. So many founders have such terrible stories of like bad investor relationships, things that went sour. I don't have any of that. So like, despite the fact that like I had great relationships with my investors and like, I was very proud when I raised money as well. Frankly, I think you should be. I do think it's very hard and an accomplishment. But after the whole experience is over and reflecting on it, and now bootstrapping my company, the prevailing thought in my mind is that I think raising early stage capital is a bad deal for most founders most of the time. I think you can make the argument that the expected value of your theoretical company increases, but the percent chance of success decreases dramatically, right? So like the expected value might still be higher. But like you might only now have a 1% chance of earning $100 billion. I'm exaggerating for comedic effect, but like I don't need $100 billion if I'm actually trying to optimize my personal, professional, financial life to earn enough money to be comfortable and not have to be thinking about money every day. Maybe we're targeting in the single digit millions of dollars. I actually don't even know, but like let's just say that's true. Then like there are so many ways to accomplish that in a much higher expected value way than going out and raising venture capital and trying to swing for a grand slam, which is what you're incentivized to do.
Exactly. It's I'm going to choke on this because I'm so like in agreement with you, but like it's funny. Like, would you prefer, to have 50% ownership of a $40 million company, which is easier to achieve than 10% ownership of a $400 million company, which is ridiculously hard to do. You know what I mean? And by the time you've done multiple rounds of funding, like how much of the company do you own? All these complicated pieces to it, it's just these expectations for this like get big fast, VC mentality. They end up making it, way harder. I think that's a really good way to put it. It's not just that it's like you have like an alignment issue. It's just that it's legitimately extremely difficult to meet these new set of expectations once you take on that capital.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chris? You in on that?
Totally agree. I always think of some of the co-founder. We were in a co-working location when we first started our business, and a lot of the companies around us had investors, and they would have like a monthly lunch meeting with their investors, and all those founders were just beside themselves leading into those meetings. They could barely contain their they'd come back. They were just super shaking. Upset. Yeah. They were like, it was just so we never went down that road. And I think it served us extremely well.
Yeah, 100%. Now, speaking of founders, you don't have a co-founder, or do you? Are you just by yourself?
So for Fractional Jobs, no, I'm a solo founder.
Right. Yeah. But did you have a co-founder previously? Or
for the poker startup, I did have a co-founder. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get your hot take on that, because it's not every day that I get to talk to someone who's actually had both experiences of being both a co-founder and a solo founder. Yeah, and I'll bias this discussion right away because I'm just going to say that there's a lot of data that like Y Combinator like really biases towards, for example, towards co-founders, and there's a lot of co-founder businesses out there. But then again, some of the biggest successes have been just effectively the solo founder show. What's your take on that?
So yeah, like the Y Combinator, there's plenty of documentation from Y Combinator around the fact that you're significantly more likely to get into Y Combinator if you have a co-founder or multiple. And also, they will advocate that if, unless there is like a dramatic disparity in skill set or seniority level between co-founders, then you should probably do a 50-50 relationship, or 33-33-30, whatever the equal divide is. And
the fraction,
both of these
if
things,
you will. There we go.
But
sorry. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
So many fractional jokes.
Yeah, it's
anyway,
just all day, puns all day. Let's go. Anyway,
yeah, like neither, like those Y Combinator points, neither of them resonate with me. And my experience. So like, let me just start with just like, what is my experience with a co-founder, and without like judgment for it in practice, or just like my own experience was like, it was mostly terrible. And it was, and I don't really have regrets, but if I was going to have regrets, it's complicated. And like, honestly, there's like parts of this, this long story that is like really tough to even share and go into.
Sure.
It was, I started the company with a very, very close friend of mine, and it was just not, it didn't, like, the relationship didn't work out and it was an incredibly frustrating experience. And the reason, like, the lowest lows of my entire life, professionally or personally, were dealing with like this co-founder drama. And so like, my own experiences aside, just like having gone through that and having talked to so many other founders that are that have gone through that, and also seeing like just the magnitude of the impact that problem had on both the business and my personal life. Like it certainly caused me to be like, I'm never having a co-founder again. And like, fractional jobs is like, and I just like, it's like straight up trauma and scar tissue. And like, I don't even care how, I can definitely agree that like having a co-founder in a lot of businesses actually would like increase your chance of success for sure. But like for me personally, it just can't ever happen again. I guess like if I had to like distill my thoughts into it, is like, it was distill my thoughts down simply. It's like, co-founder relationships can be amazing, and they can be so productive, and 1 + 1 = 3, not 2. And like, all these things are true, but they can also be the complete opposite of that. Like, choose carefully, I suppose, is like, it's just like it's such a very important decision. That's
I'm sorry for that experience, because that sucks. Like, especially losing a friend in the process, and also like setting aside the business implications, like that alone is just terrible. You make a good point though, that it is a humongous decision. And in our book, we call it like getting business married to someone. Like, it's totally, it's so intense. You're going to see them every day. Better work, and unfortunately, the reality is that some people may be good friends or good work colleagues, but they're just not a good co-founder. Like, they just don't, like, you just don't work well together, either on a personal level or in terms of vision or priorities, or generally we just call it alignment, right? Something like that. And it can go terribly wrong. A lot of good ideas didn't work out because of that co-founder team. So I am sorry to hear that. Now, what I would want to ask you is, for a lot of solo founders, which is what you obviously are now, they don't necessarily have like a straight up co-founder with like an equity split or something like that, but they usually have a good like team of like mentors or somebody who they can go to. Do you have that? Do you have like they say that kind of like replaces the co-founder in a lot of scenarios?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And for me personally, like I'm building it, and trying to set that up for myself. I don't think that I'm like particularly successful at that yet. I do feel like, in the dark on many aspects of the business. But
have you considered a fractional? I mean,
I know, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. So like, for starters, like I have people, in my circle that I lean on for advice pretty heavily.
Sure.
The fractional thing is really interesting. It's like, I cannot wait for the day when I can bring on a fractional leader into my business.
Yeah.
Because I'm bootstrapping it, I just don't have the capital for it. Yeah, and of course. Even though hiring fractional is a massive cost saving opportunity, you still need some money to be able to do it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And so bootstrapping, like it's your own money. You're really careful with it too, right? I hear you.
Yeah, but I cannot wait to get there. And like, I have a team of people that work for me that are fractional in some ways. Like, they are more junior, so I think like it's probably not totally accurate to label them fractional, but they're all part-time, right? So like the mechanics of like working with part-time people and like allocating them as resource-wise, like I'm quite familiar with.
Very cool. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome. Been a really cool discussion. Congratulations on your success so far. Sorry to hear about some of those low points as well.
Yeah.
You know, having a business is an emotional roller coaster, right?
It is. It totally is.
But I think obviously you've got a good thing going. And I wish you all the best with that going forward, man. It was wonderful having you on the show.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, this was fun.
And where can folks go to learn more about what you're offering?
Absolutely. So Fractional Jobs, you can just find it at fractionaljobs.io. My name is Taylor Crane. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. You can email me if you are a startup that is looking to explore hiring fractional talent. I would love to talk to you and just kind of talk you through like just the high levels and the details of how it works and how to go about it. And of course can potentially help you as well.
Awesome.
And that's it.
Thank you, Taylor. Appreciate it, man. Folks, that's another episode of Startup Different. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the show. We'll see you then.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end of the episode. Nicely done. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so the almighty algorithm can help others find us. Want more from Startup Different? Check out our book, Startup Different, the myth-busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business. Follow us on social. We're big on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also check us out at startupdifferent.com. Special thanks for this episode to Graham and our friends at Toronto Podcasts. Visit them at torontopodcast.ca. See you next week.